President Trump threatens to ban birthright citizenship 1 week before the midterm elections. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, we could get into a 7-hour show about the whole idea of birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment, but that's not what I want to discuss here. I want to talk about the tactical move, if you want to call it that President Trump executed when he seems to almost casually float a trial balloon in an interview on an HBO show that's done by the news site Axios, some people say that the president has the power to issue an executive order to ban birthright citizenship. They used to say that you'd need an act of Congress or a constitutional amendment, but they're telling me now that that's not the case. And I'm roughly paraphrasing what the president said there. Stephen Green, I am fascinated by this man. I mean, try to picture any other president of the United States a week before the election stepping on what would be like the third rail on steroids. This is just like the third rail of the electric chair. What do you think is going through the president's mind in this, or is he just playing fast and loose like he normally does?
Oh, so much to say. You use the phrase trial balloon. Trump puts up these trial balloons. I don't know. I think he puts up trial Hindenburgs. They come into port safely almost every time, but sometimes, man, they blow up in a most spectacular fashion. Listen, if we have one person to thank for this, I think it's Barack Obama, who, when Congress wouldn't move, threatened them with executive orders. He said, I've got a phone and a pen, and I will use them to move ahead of Congress. So this is nothing new. What's new is a couple of things, actually 3 things, maybe just 2. What's new is, number one, it's Donald Trump doing it, not Barack Obama. Barack Obama could say the most patently offensive and unconstitutional things and get away with it because, number one, he had the media on his side, and number 2, he was the opposite of a bombastic personality. The guy was smooth, he was cool, he was calculated, he was very good at just kind of sliding the unconstitutional shiv right in between our ribs, And Donald Trump is not those things. That said, this feels kind of like a Hail Mary play a week before the election. We had that big Kavanaugh bump about a month ago, and it's if the polls are anything to go by, it's the only thing we have to go by till Election Day. That bump has faded, and the Democrats are showing some strength again. Again, if the polls are to be believed. We'll find out on Tuesday. So this does have the feel of a Hail Mary pass, though, where he's looking at the election landscape and wondering, what can I do to upset this trend of the Democrats showing renewed strength? And what a way to do it. Does he have the constitutional authority to do this? That's a really tricky issue. Over at Insulet today, Glenn Reynolds, who's a constitutional law professor, was saying that Donald Trump might just have some wiggle room on here, but surely Congress should act. So I think maybe this is Trump's way of relighting a fire under his base to say, listen, maybe I can do this with an executive order, but it would be better if I had Congress. So give me a Congress that I can work with, not a Nancy Pelosi Congress. We did a segment last week. I think Bill hosted it on the best and worst case if the Democrats take control of the House in January next year. And I got to tell you, I think that this Hail Mary play might have just made that a little less likely. This guy's got great instincts. We all waited for him to crash and burn in 2015. He didn't. We thought he'd crash and burn in the first half of 2016. He didn't. We thought he'd crash and burn going into November of 2016. He didn't. It's crazy, but I'm starting to think maybe the guy knows what he's doing.
Bill Whittle, if this, as Steve pointed out, the polls have been trending in the direction of the Democrats since the last couple of weeks. If the Republicans hold on to the House and manage to hold on to their majority in the Senate and maybe even increase that by 1 or 2 senators, I've got to think that every political consultant in the United States of America should resign en masse because they simply don't understand the game. Like, this is a completely different game and they're not qualified to play it. Is that overestimating the president's savvy here, Bill?
I don't think it's. Oh, I think it's underestimating his savvy. Savvy is a very different thing from intellectualism. Savvy is the ability to intuitively understand a situation rather than analytically or even want to say rationally. Just intuitively get a feel for it. Steve talked about it as a Hail Mary play, but I don't quite see it that way, because to me a Hail Mary play is something you throw in desperation at the last minute when you're way down. To me, this is just kind of a reminder of a column of people approaching the southern border of the United States with the stated intention of marching in whether we like it or not. So Donald Trump's base on this one is, I think the last numbers I read, is about 85% of the American people on this issue. In terms of this kind of immigration thing. Very briefly, I think that this whole idea of anchor babies, birthright citizenship, is they are using it as a loophole, and it is never ever intended to be that way. Certainly, everybody understands that. So, look, here's the thing about Donald Trump, and I'll just give you this nerd reference to end it up. One of the greatest science fiction stories ever told was the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov. And the whole idea of the Foundation trilogy was based on the idea of something called psychohistory, which meant that if you studied large enough group of people long enough, you could in fact accurately predict what they were going to do. And so the psychohistorian named Harry Seldon had laid out the Seldon plan, and this is how we're going to get through 400 years of darkness instead of 6 millennia of it. And all of these things will happen, and they'll all happen in this order. And there are scientists, watching all these things that happen. Sure enough, everything's unfolding pretty much exactly according to plan. And then something happens. There's a genetic mutant born called the mule, and he is so far off the grid in terms of it's like a cosmic ray strike, boom. It's this incredibly charismatic leader that was not predicted by the Seldon plan, and is throwing the Seldon plan completely to hell. And now they have to figure out how to get it back on the plan. So Trump is the mule. He's this random element that has appeared in the calculations of everybody, and the reason that he's so effective and powerful is because he affects unlikely voters. And this is what happened in 2016. I'm hoping it's what's going to happen in a week. People poll likely voters, and that's why Donald Trump was behind on election night on 2016. But Donald Trump wasn't elected by likely voters. He was elected by unlikely voters. And this is the entire appeal of Trump, and we'll find out whether the coattails work. But in any event, this is something you do for unlikely voters. On our pregame show, Scott, we were talking about how the left is just saying, my God, he's just massacred himself. He just shot himself in the foot. It's a guaranteed win, because all Americans are like us when we say we want nothing but unlimited immigration to our southern border, regardless of nationality. In fact, what is a country anyway? We all feel this way, right? He's just shot himself in the face. We'll find out, but I suspect that it's a measured appeal and a reminder to people that it's not just the character assassination of Brett Kavanaugh that's at stake. It's also the destruction of the United States as any kind of a sovereign nation.
Politics is such an unpredictable game that it drives its practitioners into being extraordinarily careful about everything. You couch your phrases, you carefully craft your speeches, you pre-test everything by push polling and finding out what works. And a whole industry has sprung up around that of political consultants, as I referenced earlier, of people whose job it is to keep you from getting fired, basically, and that, if you're running for office, to keep you from making that fatal error that's going to lose it for you at the last moment. Donald Trump has shown what appears to that group of people to be a streak of recklessness, where he just doesn't seem to care about whether he wins or whether any of his affiliates in the Republican Party win, that he'll just say whatever he thinks at the moment that he thinks it. However, I think that he's smarter than that. I think that he is primarily driven by his view of himself as a great negotiator. And I think that one of the things he's learned through years of negotiation is that the other side, when it knows what you might do, has a plan for that. But if the other side can't predict what you're about to do, then it's really hard to plan for that. You know, just try it the next time a telemarketer calls you. Start agreeing with them immediately and see what they do. They don't know what to do with it because the script only has answers for no. And so, and I think Donald Trump is doing exactly the opposite of what a consultant would tell him to do. Not only is the president sending 5,000 troops in a support role to the southern border to meet that caravan of migrants coming from Honduras up through Mexico, he's not just doing that. He wants to be seen doing that. He is making, and the Pentagon is making a big deal of doing that. And this is a week before the election. He doesn't just want to be seen to be doing it so that the Hondurans know that they probably should turn around and go back. He wants to be seen by the voters doing this. And now, even though, as far as I know, he hasn't actually signed an executive order yet, but he kind of floats this idea out as if it suddenly was like, I've been thinking maybe we could do this. And, they tell me that maybe you can't, but maybe you can. And so he wants people to think that at any given moment, he might do anything. If you're a Democratic strategist, how do you cope with that? You think you've got him. But there's this part in the back of your head that goes, wait a minute. What is he doing? What is he doing to us? It's crazy Ivan. I mean, something is happening here that I can't fully understand. So, for our members who haven't seen it yet, go back and watch The Hunt for Red October. But for Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.
One ping only, Vasily. I thought we were all going to do a Sean Connery.
We should.
One ping only.
One ping only, Vasily.